Right. So today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of Protean Egov Technologies Limited.
Okay.
You've given us a stack of really fascinating documents.
Yes.
Their IPO prospectus, their latest annual report.
Right.
And we're hoping to extract some really valuable insights for you from this.
Absolutely. And, I think this is going to be a really fascinating sector to look at.
Yeah. Digital India, e-governance.
Exactly.
Future e-commerce.
Yeah. It's when you think about how rapidly India is evolving, in terms of its digital landscape.
Yeah.
This is a really unique window, I think, into that world.
Yeah, and it is evolving rapidly.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at these documents. I'm blown away by some of the numbers we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
They're kind of the gatekeepers of digital identity in India, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it.
Yeah.
They manage India's first digitally identifiable credential,
Right.
the PAN card. And from there, they've just kind of grown into this massive digital identity powerhouse.
Right.
I mean, they offer TIN, PAM processing, NPS, Atal Pension Yohana, eKYC, eSign.
It's everything.
They really are kind of a one-stop shop in India for all things digital identity.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they're processing, get this, over 2.2 million PAN applications per month.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's almost half the market share, isn't it, for new PAN card allotments?
That's right. It's about 45% according to their latest annual report.
Wow.
And I think this dominance is only going to grow as digital payments, lending, all this online document processing.
Right.
It just explodes in India.
Yeah.
Everything needs a secure digital identity.
Yeah.
And Protean is really in the perfect position to provide it.
Yeah, so that's their bread and butter, you could say.
Yes.
But they're not resting on their laurels, are they? They've got some pretty exciting new ventures going on.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
One that really caught my eye when I was reading through these documents is their work with ONDC, the Open Network for Digital Commerce.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
It's supposed to revolutionize e-commerce in India.
It is, and Protean is right there in the thick of it.
So how do they fit into this picture?
Well, they're developing buyer applications for ONDC.
Okay.
And they're integrating all sorts of services like transport and mobility.
Why?
Really putting them at the forefront of what could be a really massive shift in how Indians buy and sell online.
Yeah, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But, every business has its risks, right?
Of course.
What are some of the challenges that you think Protean might face going forward?
Yeah, and the IPO prospectus actually does a really good job of outlining some of the key risks.
Okay.
And one of the big ones that jumped out at me was their dependence on government contracts.
Right.
A significant chunk of their revenue comes from these government projects.
Right.
So any change in government priorities, any shift in policies, that could directly impact their bottom line.
So they're really tied to the success of the Digital India initiative.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that actually brings us to another risk, which is cost overruns in these large-scale government projects.
Right.
These projects are incredibly complex.
Yeah.
There's always the risk of unforeseen expenses, things going wrong.
Yeah.
And that could really eat into their profits and impact their growth.
Yeah, and then there's the whole cybersecurity thing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they're handling tons of sensitive personal data, financial data.
Yeah.
A security breach could be devastating.
Oh, it would be disastrous.
Yeah.
I mean, not only could it damage their reputation, but also their financial stability. And on top of that, you've got the constantly evolving landscape of data protection regulations.
Right.
Staying ahead of the curve on data privacy is absolutely crucial, both to avoid penalties and to maintain that public trust.
So it's a balancing act, right?
It is.
They're trying to seize these amazing growth opportunities while also managing some very real risks. Sounds like a lot to juggle.
It is. And on top of all of that, they've got to worry about the competition.
Right.
I mean, the tech world is fiercely competitive.
Yeah.
The threat of becoming obsolete is always looming.
Yeah.
They've got to constantly innovate.
Right.
They have to adapt.
Yeah.
Just to stay ahead.
Okay, so they've got to watch out for the competition. But how are they doing in terms of corporate governance and sustainability?
Yeah.
Those are becoming pretty important these days.
Absolutely. Investors are increasingly looking at those factors.
Yeah.
And Protean seems to be taking them seriously.
Okay.
The annual report really highlights their commitment to environmental, social, and governance, those ESG principles.
Right.
And they even have a dedicated ESG committee.
Oh, wow.
So they're really putting their money where their mouth is.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and they're really walking the talk, especially with their focus on what they call social capitalism.
Okay.
It's not just about profits for them.
Right.
It's about creating value for all stakeholders.
Interesting.
Employees, customers, the community,
Yeah.
everyone.
So it's a bit of a different approach.
It is.
But it seems to be working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key takeaway, I think, for anyone looking at this company.
Yeah.
Is understanding how companies like Protean are navigating this new landscape.
Right.
This rapidly evolving digital landscape.
Yeah.
Balancing growth with sustainability, with responsible governance.
Okay, so it's a balancing act.
It is.
But speaking of developments, they just went public, right?
They did, yeah, in November 2023.
Okay.
And it was a huge success.
Yeah.
Their IPO was oversubscribed by almost 24 times.
Wow.
Which really just shows the confidence that investors have in their future prospects.
So they must be doing something right.
Yeah.
But are they resting on their laurels now?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
They're constantly launching new business lines.
Oh, wow.
One example is Protean X, which uses blockchain technology to create these really secure digital credentials.
Interesting.
It's a really smart move, tapping into this growing demand for verifiable digital proof of identity.
So they're not afraid to take risks
and
dive into these new areas.
Yeah, they're not just riding the digital wave, they're actively shaping it.
Right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yes, we have.
Their business model, their sector, growth, market share, competitive advantages, risks, governance, competition, sustainability, growth potential.
I think you got it all.
Anything else?
I think that covers the basics.
Okay, good.
But now I think we need to dive a little deeper into some of these areas.
Let's do it.
Starting with their competitive landscape.
Right.
They're not the only players in this game.
Right. All right, let's get into it. So who are they up against? Like, who are the main competitors?
Well, it depends on which arena we're looking at.
Okay.
In the e-governance space, they're going up against some of those other big IT services companies.
Okay.
Companies like Infosys, TCS, Wipro.
Right. The giants.
Those are the giants, with deep pockets, years of experience.
Yeah. So how does Protean stand out in that crowd? What's their secret weapon?
Well, I think one of their biggest advantages is just their deep understanding of the Indian e-governance landscape. I mean, they've been in the game for a long time.
Right.
They've got these strong relationships with government agencies.
Right.
And they've developed real expertise in areas like digital identity management.
Right.
It's not easy for a newcomer to just replicate that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about in the digital identity space?
Yeah.
You mentioned those companies like CZ, Digio, Authbridge.
Mm-hmm.
Are those the main rivals there?
Yeah, I mean, those are definitely some of the key players.
Mm-hmm.
But that space is incredibly dynamic.
Okay.
New companies are popping up all the time.
Right.
Each with their own little spin on eKYC, e-sign, digital credential management.
Right.
So it's a constant race to innovate.
So how does Protean keep its edge in that race?
Well, I think their strong brand recognition is a huge asset.
Okay.
They've built this reputation for reliability over the years.
Right.
And that counts for a lot in a market where trust is so important.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, they have a really robust infrastructure.
Yeah.
They can handle massive volumes of transactions.
Right.
And they offer a full suite of digital identity solutions.
Okay.
So they're really a one-stop shop for a lot of businesses.
So they're holding their own
Yeah.
in e-governance and digital identity.
Mm-hmm.
What about this account aggregation thing?
Okay.
Who are they battling in that space?
Well, that's a newer market.
Okay.
But it's heating up fast.
Right.
They're up against other account aggregators.
Okay. That are licensed by the Reserve Bank of India.
Right.
So you've got companies like CamsFinServ, Finvu, NESLs.
So it's a pretty crowded field.
It is, yeah.
What sets Protean apart in that particular race?
Well, I think their expertise in data management is a huge plus.
Okay.
They know how to handle sensitive data securely, efficiently.
Yeah.
Which is crucial in this business.
Yeah, sure.
Plus, they've got strong relationships with financial institutions.
Okay.
Which is essential for an account aggregator.
Right.
And of course, they can leverage their existing suite of services,
right,
to create a more integrated offering.
So it sounds like they've got a lot going for them.
They do.
But the competition is fierce.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's why understanding this competitive landscape is so important.
Right.
It gives you a sense of the challenges they face.
Okay.
And the strategies they're employing to stay ahead.
Okay. So we've talked about the rivals.
Yeah.
But what about the risks?
We touched on some earlier, like their dependence on government contracts.
Right.
The cybersecurity threat.
Yeah.
What else should we be aware of?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me in the IPO prospectus was the potential for cost overruns.
Right.
These big government projects, they're complex beasts.
Right.
It's not always easy to predict all the expenses.
Yeah.
And unexpected costs, they could eat into their profits and really impact their growth.
And then there's that whole data privacy issue, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Regulations are constantly changing.
Yeah.
It must be a challenge to keep up.
It is a huge challenge. I mean, they're dealing with mountains of sensitive data.
Yeah.
So any misstep could lead to hefty fines.
Right.
Or even damage their reputation. So they have to be incredibly careful and proactive in this area.
Okay, so those are the risks.
Yeah.
What about the opportunities? Where do you see the biggest potential for Proteans?
Well, I think the demand for digital identity solutions is only going to explode in the coming years.
Right.
I mean, think about it as more aspects of our lives move online.
Yeah.
Everything from banking to healthcare to education.
Right.
Secure digital identities are going to become essential.
Right.
And Protean is perfectly positioned to ride that wave.
So they're kind of like the digital passport office of the future.
Exactly. And there's also this huge push for financial inclusion in India.
Right.
Bringing banking services to millions of people who are currently unbanked.
Right.
And Protean solutions can really help make that happen.
Okay.
Their eKYC and account aggregation services can streamline customer onboarding.
Right.
Make it easier for people to access financial services.
So they're kind of democratizing access to finance?
They are, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And then you've got e-commerce,
Right.
which is absolutely booming in India. And their involvement in ONDC gives them a front row seat to all this growth.
Yeah.
They're not just building buyer applications.
Right.
They're integrating services like transport, mobility.
Okay.
Making the whole online shopping experience smoother, more convenient.
So they're basically a one-stop shop for everything digital in India.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
But with all this talk about growth and opportunity, are they forgetting about sustainability?
That's a good question.
What? No, not at all.
Okay.
They're very vocal about their commitment to those ESG principles. They've got that dedicated ESG committee. They're focused on social capitalism.
Okay.
And they're actively working to reduce their environmental footprint.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's not just about profits for them.
Right.
It's about making a positive impact.
Yeah.
And these sustainability initiatives are likely to attract investors
Yeah.
who are looking for companies that are doing good while doing well.
It sounds like Protean is firing on all cylinders.
They are.
Yeah.
But we've been talking a lot about the big picture.
Right.
I think now we need to zoom in a little bit on
Okay.
some of their specific products and services.
All right, where do you want to start?
Well, we've talked a lot about PAN cards.
Yeah.
It seems like that's their bread and butter.
Yeah, tell me more about that, about their PAN card services.
Sure. So, they started as the company that managed PAN cards.
Right.
And they've really become the undisputed leader in that space.
Okay.
They handle everything from online applications and verification to data correction and updation.
Wow.
They've really streamlined the whole process,
What?
making it super easy for individuals and businesses to get and manage their PAN cards.
So it's not just about issuing the cards.
No.
It's about managing the whole life cycle.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And they're processing millions of applications every month.
Yeah.
So they've built this really robust infrastructure to handle that volume.
Right.
They've got multiple processing centers.
Right.
A huge network of agents across the country.
That's impressive.
It is.
Okay. So they're the kings of PAN cards.
Yeah.
What else are they known for?
Well, their eKYC services are a big deal.
Yeah.
eKYC, electronic know your customer.
Right.
It's all about verifying customer identity digitally.
Yeah.
And it's a crucial part of the digital economy.
Right.
And Protean is a leading provider of these solutions in India.
Okay.
they've got a range of offerings,
Okay.
including Aadhaar-based eKYC,
Right.
which uses the Aadhaar biometric database for verification.
Right.
And they even have offline eKYC,
Okay.
which is really useful in areas with limited internet connectivity.
So they've got all the bases covered,
They do.
from the high-tech to the low-tech
Yeah.
solutions.
And their eKYC services are used by a ton of businesses.
Okay.
Banks, insurance companies, telecom operators.
Right.
And they've really helped these companies streamline their customer onboarding processes,
Okay.
reduce fraud,
Right.
comply with KYC regulations.
So they're really making a difference in how businesses operate.
They are, yeah.
And as the demand for digital identity verification continues to grow,
Yeah,
their eKYC services are only going to become more important.
absolutely.
Okay, eKYC, check.
Uh-huh.
What's next?
Well, let's talk about e-sign.
Okay.
In a digital world,
Yeah.
electronic signatures have become essential.
Right.
And Protean is a licensed e-sign service provider.
Right.
They offer these secure and legally valid electronic signature solutions.
Okay.
Using Aadhaar authentication to ensure authenticity and integrity.
Right.
They've got API-based integration for businesses.
Okay.
A web-based portal for individuals.
Okay.
So it makes it easy for everyone to sign documents electronically.
So they're making it easier to do business in a digital world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their e-sign solutions are promoting paperless transactions.
Right.
Making things more efficient.
Right.
Reducing costs for businesses.
Yeah.
And they're making it easier for people to sign documents remotely.
Right.
Which is a huge time saver.
Yeah.
And as India continues its digital transformation,
Yeah.
that demand for e-sign services is only going to increase.
Right.
Which is good news for Protean.
Okay. So we've got PAN cards,
Mm-hmm.
eKYC,
Yeah.
e-sign.
Uh-huh.
What else? What else is in their bag of tricks?
Well, they're also a major player in the National Pension System,
Okay.
or NPS.
Right.
They've been the central record-keeping agency, the CRA,
Okay.
for the NPS for over 15 years.
Right.
Managing the pension records of millions of Indians.
That's a huge responsibility.
It's a massive responsibility.
Yeah.
They handle everything from account openings and contributions to
Uh-huh.
withdrawals and benefit payments.
Right.
They've developed a really robust platform for NPS administration. Okay.
Ensuring that all that pension data is secure and accurate.
So it sounds like they're playing a crucial role
They are?
in helping people plan for their retirement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they've leveraged technology to make the whole process much easier for subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
People can manage their accounts, access their information online.
Yep.
Super convenient.
And their expertise in managing these large-scale Social Security programs is a huge asset.
Right?
They've proven they can handle these massive volumes of transactions,
Right.
with sensitive data.
Yeah.
And that gives them a lot of credibility in the space.
All right. NPS. Got it.
Yeah.
What else is on their plate?
Well, they're also involved in the Atal Pension Yojana,
Okay.
or APY,
Right.
which is a Social Security scheme that's designed for workers in the informal sector.
Oh, okay.
So, people who might not have access to those traditional retirement plans.
Right. So it's a really important initiative.
Yeah, it is. How are they involved in that?
Well, they're providing CRA services for the APY,
Nice.
supporting enrollment and administration.
Right.
They've developed this dedicated platform to manage subscriber data, benefit payments, making sure that the scheme runs smoothly.
So they're using their technology
Yeah.
to expand pension coverage to a wider section of the population.
Exactly. Yeah, it's another example of how they're leveraging their expertise
Right.
to make a positive social impact.
Yeah.
Promoting financial inclusion, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to secure a comfortable retirement.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got PAN cards,
Mm-hmm.
eKYC,
Yeah.
e-sign,
Right.
NPS,
Mm-hmm.
and APY.
Right.
What else are they up to?
Well, they're also doing some interesting things in the education sector.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so they've developed several initiatives
Okay.
aimed at improving access to education
Okay.
and promoting educational financing.
Interesting.
One notable initiative is the Vigya Lakshmi portal, or VLP,
Right.
which basically connects students with banks and financial institutions that offer educational loans.
So it's a one-stop shop for students who are looking to finance their higher education.
Exactly.
That's really helpful.
Yeah. Trying to navigate that world of student loans can be a nightmare.
It can be a nightmare, yeah.
And the VLP has made the whole process so much easier. Yeah. They've also developed the Vidya Sarathi portal, or VSP, which facilitates the distribution of scholarships to deserving students.
So they're helping students overcome these financial barriers to education.
They are, yeah.
That's amazing.
And it aligns perfectly with their commitment to social capitalism.
Right.
And their belief in investing in human capital.
Yeah, it sounds like they're really trying to make a difference.
They are.
In the world.
Yeah, and their involvement in the education sector is just one example of how they're using technology to empower individuals. Right.
Create a more equitable society.
Okay, education. Check. What else is on the list?
Well, let's talk about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
You know, as a company that handles so much sensitive data, they understand the importance of robust cybersecurity measures.
For sure.
And they actually have a dedicated subsidiary. Protean InfoSec Services Limited. That provides a range of cybersecurity and information security solutions.
So they're not just protecting their own data. They're helping other businesses protect theirs.
Exactly. You know, they offer services like vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, security audits, incident response, even security awareness training.
Wow.
You know, they're helping businesses understand the cyber threats they face. And take steps to protect themselves.
So they're like the digital guardians.
In a way, they are.
Yeah.
And their expertise in cybersecurity is a huge asset. Both for their own operations and for their clients. Okay, cybersecurity. Got it. What else is in their toolbox?
Well, they're also offering cloud computing services to businesses. You know, they're helping companies migrate their operations to the cloud. And really take advantage of all the benefits that cloud computing offers. You know, things like scalability, efficiency, cost savings.
So they're basically a one-stop shop for all things digital.
Pretty much, yeah. And their cloud offerings include everything. From infrastructure as a service to platform as a service to software as a service. You know, they've got this secure and reliable cloud infrastructure, which is essential for businesses that are relying on cloud-based solutions.
It sounds like they're really ahead of the curve.
They are.
In terms of cloud computing.
Yeah, and their cloud services are likely to play a big role in their future growth.
Okay, cloud computing, check. What else is on the horizon for Protean?
Well, we've already talked about their involvement in ONDC, or Open Network for Digital Commerce.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a big one.
But remind me again, how are they involved in that?
Right. So they're developing buyer applications for ONDC, which will allow businesses and consumers to participate in this new e-commerce ecosystem. And they're not just building these basic apps. They're integrating all sorts of services like transport, mobility, to make the whole online shopping experience more seamless and convenient.
So they're not just building the platform.
No.
They're creating this whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Yeah. And their involvement in ONDC is a really smart move. You know, it positions them at the forefront of India's e-commerce evolution. And it allows them to leverage their expertise in digital identity, payments, logistics, to create these really innovative solutions for this emerging market.
So it's like they're building the digital roads and highways.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, and their ONDC initiatives are likely to be a major growth driver for them in the coming years.
Okay, ONDC, check. What else is on their radar?
Well, they're also making waves in the digital agriculture space.
Really?
Yeah.
Agriculture seems like a whole different ballgame.
It is, but it's another sector that's going through this major digital transformation. And Protean is right there in the thick of it.
So how so?
Okay, so they've developed this platform that connects farmers with all sorts of stakeholders in the agricultural ecosystem. You know, buyers, suppliers, financial institutions, even government agencies.
Wow, so they're kind of like a digital matchmaker.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. And their platform gives farmers access to a ton of valuable information. Things like government schemes, weather forecasts, market prices, best practices.
So they're really giving farmers the tools they need.
They are.
To succeed in a digital world.
Yeah. And their digital agriculture platform is helping to improve efficiency.
Okay.
Transparency.
Right.
Profitability in the sector, which is a huge win for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how technology can be used to empower farmers and transform the agricultural landscape.
It is, and this initiative aligns perfectly with their commitment to social capitalism.
Right.
And their focus on creating solutions that benefit a wider section of society.
Okay, digital agriculture, check. Yeah. What else is on their agenda?
Well, they're also making a big push in the healthcare sector.
Really? Healthcare seems like a whole different ballgame.
It is, but it's another sector that's ripe for digital transformation.
Right.
And Protean is involved in a number of initiatives that are aimed at modernizing healthcare in India.
Such as?
Well, for example, they're involved in the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission, or ABDM, which aims to create this national digital health ecosystem.
That sounds ambitious.
It is a very ambitious project.
Yeah.
The goal is to connect healthcare providers. Patients, insurers.
Right.
Creating this really seamless and efficient healthcare system.
Yeah.
And Protean's expertise in digital identity management and data security is playing a key role in this initiative.
So they're really helping to build the digital infrastructure.
They are.
For a more connected and efficient healthcare system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're involved in developing solutions for patient identification, electronic health records, data privacy.
It sounds like they're really committed to using their technology for good.
They are.
Yeah.
And their involvement in digital health is another example of how they're leveraging their expertise to make a positive impact on society. Yeah. They're helping to improve access to quality healthcare and create a more equitable healthcare system in India.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their products and services, their competitive landscape, the risks they face, the opportunities they're pursuing. But I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
You're right. There's so much more to explore.
Like what?
Well, we haven't even talked about their foray into blockchain technology.
Oh, yeah. Blockchain.
Yeah.
That's the thing everyone's talking about.
It is. And Protean is right there on the cutting edge.
Okay.
Exploring its applications in a number of different areas.
Like what?
One of their most exciting initiatives is their Protean X platform. Which uses blockchain to create these secure and verifiable digital credentials.
So instead of carrying around all these paper certificates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can have this digital version that's tamper-proof.
Right.
Think about it. Educational degrees, professional certifications, identity documents.
Yeah.
All stored securely on the blockchain.
That's a game changer.
It is, yeah. Protean X is really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with digital credentials.
So they're not just embracing the digital revolution.
Yeah.
They're actively shaping it.
They are. And their willingness to embrace these new technologies like blockchain, it's really a testament to their innovative spirit.
Okay, blockchain, check. Yeah. What else haven't we talked about?
Well, we haven't really discussed their corporate governance structure.
Oh, yeah, corporate governance.
Yeah.
That's important.
It is, especially for a company that handles so much sensitive data.
Right, exactly.
And Protean actually has a very robust corporate governance framework in place.
Okay.
They have a very clear board structure, well-defined roles and responsibilities, a strong commitment to transparency and accountability.
So they're not just talking the talk. They're walking the walk.
They are.
When it comes to corporate governance.
Yeah, and they've adopted best practices from around the world.
Okay.
Aligning their policies and procedures with international standards.
It sounds like they're taking corporate governance very seriously.
They are, and that's a really good sign for investors.
Yeah.
It shows that they're committed to running the company ethically, responsibly.
Yes. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But I feel like we've just skimmed the surface.
You're right. There's so much more to explore.
Yeah. But I think we've laid a good foundation.
Yeah, we have.
For understanding Protean's business. Their sector.
Yeah.
Their growth. Potential competitive advantages.
Right.
The risks and opportunities they face.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. But I'm curious, what's next for Protean?
Okay.
What does the future hold for them?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one we'll explore in our next segment.
Okay, let's get into it. So we've talked about kind of where Protean stands today.
Right.
You know, their products, their rivals, their strengths, their challenges. But what about the future? Where are they headed?
Well, predicting the future is always tricky, especially in a field like technology.
Yeah.
But I think we can look at the trends, the opportunities, and Protean's own strategic moves to get a sense of what might be in store.
Okay, so put on your prognosticator hat.
Right.
What are some possible scenarios for Protean's future?
Okay. Well, one scenario, and I think perhaps the most likely, is continued growth and market leadership.
Okay.
If they keep executing their strategy effectively,
right.
if they keep innovating, adapting, if they keep building strong partnerships, they could very well maintain that dominant position.
So more of the same, but bigger and better.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
This scenario probably involves expanding their existing services, developing new solutions, maybe even making some strategic acquisitions.
Okay.
They're already on this pretty impressive growth trajectory.
Yeah.
And they've got the resources, the know-how to keep that momentum going.
Okay. That's the optimistic scenario. What about the challenges?
Okay.
I mean, nothing stays the same forever, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another
scenario we have to consider is increased competition.
Right.
And margin pressure.
Okay.
I mean, the digital landscape in India is incredibly dynamic.
Yeah.
You've got new players popping up all the time.
Right.
And as that competition heats up, Protean might find it harder to maintain their current profit margins.
So a price war, basically.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
They might have to lower their prices to stay competitive.
Right.
Which could impact their profitability.
Right.
So in that scenario, they'll really need to focus on cost optimization.
Okay.
Finding ways to become even more efficient.
Yeah.
And differentiating themselves through innovation.
Right.
Always staying one step ahead.
Always staying ahead of the game.
Exactly.
But what about something totally unexpected?
Like, what if some game-changing technology comes along?
Right.
And just disrupts everything?
Yeah, that's always a possibility.
Yeah.
A third scenario involves disruption from some new technology or business model that we haven't even thought of yet.
Right.
That's the nature of the tech world. It's constantly evolving.
Right.
And what's hot today could be obsolete tomorrow.
So how would Protean handle that kind of upheaval?
Well, I think the key is agility and adaptability.
Okay.
They have to be willing to embrace new technologies, to experiment, to pivot their business model if necessary.
Yeah.
And they have to stay close to their customers, anticipating their needs, evolving with them.
Yeah.
If they can do that, I think they'll be well positioned to navigate whatever the future throws at them.
Okay, so those are some possible scenarios. But for someone who's maybe thinking about investing in Protean, what are the key takeaways?
Yeah.
What should they be considering?
Well, I think Protean has a lot going for it.
Okay.
Strong track record.
Yeah.
A compelling growth story.
Right.
A solid position in a rapidly growing market.
Right.
But like any investment, there are risks to consider.
Okay, so what are the red flags?
Well, we've already talked about competition.
Right.
And that's a big one.
Yeah.
They're facing off against some really serious players.
Right.
And that pressure could impact their profitability, their growth.
Right.
Then there's the risk of technological disruption.
Right.
Something could come along and make their current offerings obsolete.
Right.
Force them to scramble to catch up.
Competition and disruption, those are the tech world's two favorite buzzwords.
They are, aren't they?
What else?
Well, regulatory changes are another factor to consider.
Okay.
The government is constantly tweaking policies and regulations.
Right.
And those changes could impact Protean's operations or profitability. And then, of course, there's always the wild card of global economic conditions.
Right.
India's economy is tied to the global economy.
Yeah.
So any major downturn could have ripple effects on Protean.
So it's not all sunshine and roses.
No.
There are some real risks to consider.
There are, but that's true of any investment.
Right.
The key is to weigh the risks against the potential rewards and make an informed decision.
So bottom line, is Protean a good investment?
Well, that's not for me to say.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm just here to provide the information, the insights to help you make your own decision.
Okay.
But I will say this, Protean is a company with a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And they're operating in a very exciting space.
Okay, fair enough. You've given us a lot to think about.
Good.
But before we wrap up,
yeah,
I have one last question.
Okay.
We've been talking about Protean kind of from this business perspective.
Right.
But what about the bigger picture? What does their success mean for India?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think Protean's story is really a microcosm of India's digital transformation.
Okay.
They're not just building a successful business.
Right.
They're playing a key role in shaping a more inclusive and digitally empowered India.
So they're kind of like digital pioneers.
They are, yeah. They're creating jobs. They're
Mhm.
fostering innovation.
Right.
They're making it easier for people to access essential services. And their success is really a testament to the power of technology to transform lives and create a better future.
It's inspiring. It's like they're proving that technology can be a force for good.
Exactly. And they're not alone.
Right.
There are countless other companies and individuals who are working to build a better India through technology.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be watching this digital revolution unfold.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything.
I think so.
From their humble beginnings as a PAN card management company to their ambitious plans to revolutionize e-commerce.
Yeah.
I mean, Protean's journey has been remarkable.
It has.
Yeah.
And their story is far from over.
Right.
They're a company on the move, constantly innovating, adapting, pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the digital world.
So for our listener who's been, digging into all this information, what's the one thing you want them to remember about Protean?
I want them to remember that Protean is a company that's not afraid to dream big. And to take risks.
Yeah.
They're not content with the status quo.
Right.
They're constantly looking for ways to improve, to innovate, to make a positive impact on the world.
That's a great message.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
yeah,
what's your final piece of advice for our listener?
Keep exploring. The world of technology is constantly changing.
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover.
Right.
Don't be afraid to dive deep.
Yeah.
To ask questions.
Yeah.
To challenge assumptions.
Right.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to create your own digital revolution.
That's a fantastic note to end on.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Protean Egov Technologies Limited.
It's been my pleasure.
And thank you for listening.
Yes.
We hope you found this deep dive informative, insightful, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.